Chapter 21.
Mom, does Daddy love us?
Angela asked.
Of course he does,
Gretchen explained.
He shows it differently than I do or Grandma does, than just about everyone.
She could have the talk about his being selfish with Clover, but with Angie and Rebecca, she'd risk one of them saying something to him and that could set him off. Clover said nothing about their interchange. When the girls weren't invited to Tony's weekend game, which had been the custom, they all relaxed. Gretchen wasn't looking forward to another confrontation. Every day the mailman came, she was nervous to perhaps find a summons. The attorney that Tyler's mom used dealt with intellectual property rights for artists. Heather had some choice words to describe Tony's outburst, especially doing so in front of the three girls.
The guy's had everything handed to him. He's a freak of nature, but that doesn't hold any standing with me. He could do with less muscle mass and more common sense,
Heather Gray told her.
I'm hoping he'll get so involved in the wedding that he'll forget the whole thing, answered Gretchen. You really think so? Seems to me he wants what he wants, and doesn't matter who it cuts across. Poor Joni. I hope you warned her, discreetly of course. I did. I'm not going to tell you what she said as a response. You have to tell me now. She thinks if they have a child together, it will settle Tony down. Oh, God. One of those. Don't get me wrong. Children are a blessing, but to use them to patch up a flawed marriage? It's not fair to the child. I was so naive and so enamored with Tony's charisma, I didn't see all that. You've done a great job, Gretchen. I'll think about a referral. Ask around. In my crowd, though, most everyone is grandparents. But I'll keep asking. You want a pit bull? Gretchen laughed. That's for sure. If you have a pit bull on Tony's ankle, doesn't matter how tall he is.
Later in the week, she managed a phone conversation with the attorney her mother recommended in Palo Alto.
Is there any dispute with the paternity?
Gretchen was taken aback.
Excuse me?
Well, could any of these girls not be his daughter?
Of course not.
She looked into the phone as if it had been crawling with ants.
Just had to ask. So both of you acknowledge Tony is the biological father?
Yes.
And he's not paid any child support, even though he's an NBA star?
I refused the money. I told him instead to put it in a fund for their college, which he's done.
Now, you could go after him for back child support,
he suggested.
But that doesn't solve the problem of the custody of the girls. I'm not interested in making him mad. I just want to keep the girls. And I don't want them spending lots of time over there. It isn't a good environment. Joni's inattention led to my daughter being kidnapped.
A judge might not agree with you. Think of the things Tony can provide that you cannot. I'm not agreeing with all this, but you can see how someone on the outside might construe it differently.
They don't need to live in a palace and be driven to school with a driver to have a normal life. They need love and care. A parent who will spend time with them.
After the discussion, Gretchen was worried. Tony had deeded the house over to her, such that she could make the payments on her own. They had put over 50% down from one of Tony's bonuses. And in exchange, she didn't take any money from him for support, because of pride. She'd been discarded, traded in on a new model, and before this week, he'd never seemed interested in maintaining a relationship with the girls. The following week, Joni asked to have coffee with her to discuss the wedding plans.
I appreciate you doing this, Joni,
Gretchen said as she arrived at the coffee house.
I don't want to discuss all this in front of the girls.
Joni was already sipping her latte.
I thought it would be best, she said meekly. Go get your coffee, I'll wait.
Gretchen scanned the room, filled with college and high school students doing their homework or working on computers. Joni's ponytail was just as bouncy as it was 2 weeks ago, but something caught her eye. On the left side of Joni's neck was a sizable bruise. She'd flipped up her pink jogging suit jacket, but on the left side, the collar had turned down, revealing the bruise. It had always been at the back of her mind that if she remained with Tony, he'd eventually be physical with her. The first time he slapped her across the face, she had been filled with shock and could not believe it. She expected he'd feel horrible and collapse and hold her, but instead, he was furious. "You made me do this!" He'd been drinking, so she chalked it up to that. But when it happened the second time, she knew something was wrong. Seeing the pictures on TV with the half-naked dancer only confirmed the fact that Tony was going through some kind of meltdown. Everything became Gretchen's fault. Even the girls needing her attention was a criticism. The tighter Tony seemed to grip, the more elusive their relationship became. She had finally had enough when Clover saw the spectacle on TV that she knew she had to get out. Luckily, he never resisted. She figured he was too preoccupied with all the publicity and attention he was getting. A divorce was what every bad boy was destined for, and he seemed to accept and even like it. Gretchen brought her cup to the table. "I have to ask you something. Has Tony been violent with you, Joni?" The gorgeous Barbie doll furled her eyebrows together and curled her lip. "No. Why would you ask me that?" "Because of that." She pointed to the left side of Joni's neck. "That's a bruise your makeup can't hide." "Oh, that!" She laughed, making light of it. "We were wrestling, you know. On accident. I came down on the edge of the coffee table, just a harmless accident." She delivered it smoothly, but the way Joni searched Gretchen's eyes gave her away. She searched for evidence Gretchen had fallen for the ruse. Gretchen thought it was unwise to divulge that Tony had hit her twice, but she wanted to warn the woman. If she'd hear her, she decided it was too dangerous. Gretchen changed the subject and let Joni describe what she had in mind for the special day. The two younger girls would spread rose petals ahead of the bride. Clover could be one of the bridesmaids. They looked over dresses and the reception hall, adjacent to the old Episcopal church. It was going to be a very expensive and beautiful affair. "I can't wait to see all this unfold, Joni. When Tony and I got married, he wanted to elope. My mother really read him the riot act and insisted on something. But I'm glad you're doing it this way. And how fun for the girls to be involved." "You think so? I was worried about that." "It's more awkward for Clover. But Angie doesn't even remember when Tony lived with us. We had very little money at first. Life was simple. I didn't mind. But if you can, well, why not have a big grand wedding?" "Thank you. I'm really glad you approve. My parents can't afford this, so Tony's paying for all of it." She beamed. "He just wants me to be happy." "I'm sure he does." Gretchen bit her tongue against warning Joni about Tony's temper. She hoped it was something that he was getting help for. It wasn't her place at all to be a part of that. For Easter break, Gretchen took the girls down to Palo Alto to see her folks. Kate and little Grady joined them, coming up from Coronado since Tyler was also on deployment with Trace. Mr. and Mrs. Morgan took them to the Junior Museum and attended a Saturday play at a local children's theater. Grady was trying to crawl on a coverlet spread out for him as they sat in the backyard. Rebecca and Angie loved giving him colorful blocks and then taking them away, trying to encourage him to reach and crawl to get the prize. "You and Trace still close?" Kate asked. "I think so, but things are on ice a bit with the deployment. He'll call you eventually. They have to be careful." "Do you know where they are?" Gretchen asked. Kate shrugged. "Sort of. Christy kinda spilled the beans. I don't know where exactly, but it's in the Caribbean. And you cannot tell a soul I told you." "No worries. But actually that makes me feel better. I was worried it was Africa or the Middle East." "My sentiments exactly.
The only thing dangerous about the Caribbean are the pretty girls and the skimpy bikinis and the rum."
The two sisters laughed.
"I was going to go over to the cemetery tomorrow to visit."
Gretchen stumbled on the word.
"Your father's grave? I think you should. Will you take Clover?"
"Not yet. Not time yet for that."
"You want some company?" Kate asked. "Do you think Dad would mind?" "Not a chance. He'd probably drive you over if you asked him."
Gretchen had recently found out that the man who raised her, and whom she considered her father, was not her biological dad. Her mother had fallen in love with a young Marine on an airplane trip to Portland, as it happened, while she had a boyfriend in California she was breaking up with. One thing led to another, and her mother became pregnant. The Marine was killed on his next deployment in Southeast Asia. But before he died, he had written some of the most beautiful letters Gretchen had ever seen. When their mom met their dad, he accepted Gretchen as his own. The Morgans took the girls shopping while Kate and Gretchen went to the veteran cemetery nearby. She'd visited his grave many times before and often wondered what he was like. She knelt by the headstone and brushed pine needles off the cool surface of the white granite. Rows of American flags blew in the breeze, sounding like sails on little boats out on the bay. Kate stood behind her.
"I should have brought some flowers." "No, Gretchen. He knows what's in your heart. I'll bet he's smiling down on you right now."
She closed her eyes and decided to talk to him.
"Dad, if you are there, I just wanted to say that although I never met you in person, through your letters I've come to understand and love who you are and how you loved my mother. Thank you for that. Thank you for writing those beautiful letters so I could get even a glimpse of who you are. I suppose you know Mom is very happy, and the man I call Dad has been a real father to me in every way except one. I have a favor to ask of you. I met someone very special to me, and he's serving with Kate's husband, Tyler, on a mission of some kind. Watch over them both. Bring them both back safely. I know you'll be their guardian, but don't go appear to them and scare the liver out of them. Love you, Dad. I always will. Until I see you someday.